All right, everyone. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to introduce a tens number for the score. So right now it's just showing units. When it gets past 9, it just goes to the next costume, but there is no next costume. So what we're going to do, well, what we want it to do is we want a 1 to appear here so that it says 10, and then we want this to go back to 0, right? And then kind of start over. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create this tens number. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to go down to 0 and I'm going to right click or control click if you do that on your computer. And I'm going to duplicate it. Now, so that means we've got two numbers now. You can see them on the stage here. So over here and over here. And so I'll just move this one over into its proper place. Which is right next to this one. And so this is going to allow us to write numbers like 10, 11, 12, 23, 24, and so on. So just so we don't get confused, let's remember that this is the units and this is the tens. So go to the first of these and let's rename it units. And then go to the second one. And let's rename that tens. And, okay, so now we've got units and tens, but the code for them is exactly the same. And we don't want the code for them to be exactly the same. So the first thing I want is, when I receive start game, this is in the tens code. When I receive start game, switch costume to 0. Yes, I want you to be in 0. But I don't want to see this kind of 0, 0 at the beginning of the game, and then 0, 1, and 0, 2, because it looks ugly. So I want this to hide until it at least turns to a 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a hide in at the beginning of the game. Okay, now the next thing that I want is I want it to appear when it first goes up into the 1s. But first we've got to get it to move up into the 1s. So how do we do that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the units. When it reaches a certain point, when it gets past 9, I want it to send a signal to the tens to go up by 1. So I want you to go to control. In the units code, I want you to go to control and grab an if then else. And pull off this next costume bit. We're going to use that in a moment. And put the if then else in its place. So when a ghost disappears and the score should go up by 1, I want it to do a little test. I want it to test whether it's already up to 9. And then if it is, I want it to send the signal and go back to 0. Right? So how do we test if it's 9? Well, as usual, we're going to need one of these equals. It's quite common when you've got an if then to start off with an equals. Not always, but a lot of the time. And I'm going to go to looks. And then I want to grab a little special variable called costume number. And so I want to say, hey, if the costume number is already 9, then I don't want you to go to the next costume. I want you to go to costume 0. So switch costume to 0. And then I want you to send a message to the tens that it needs to go up by 1. So I'm going to say broadcast. And then it's going to be a new message because we haven't used this before. Let's call it increment tens. Increment tens. Okay. But otherwise, if you're not already on a 9, then just go to the next costume. Right? So there's a special case. If you're on the 9, then you need to switch to the 0 and increment tens. Now, one little thing here that's very important. I put the 9 in here, but actually that was a mistake and I knew I was making it. But I just wanted to kind of do it quickly so that we could understand what we were doing. But actually, it's not the 9 that I need, and I'll show you why not. So if you look at costumes, we started with 0, which means 0 is costume number 1. So it's the number in the top left that is the costume number. It looks like a 0, but it's actually costume number 1. And then the second costume, which is costume number 2, looks like a 1. And the third costume, the one that we're using as the number 2, is costume number 3. So there's a mismatch. It's 1 out in all of these cases, right? Which means that when it's on 9, it'll be in costume number 10. So to check whether it's already on 9, we need costume number 10. So just here, this should be 10. So if you're on costume number 10, which means you've reached that 9, then you're ready to go back to 0. That's what that says. Now we just need to kind of fix this part here. It says broadcast increment 10s. Well, we need to make sure the 10s hears that. So when I receive increment 10s, I go to the next costume and then I appear. As like this. So what happens is at the beginning of the game, it's hidden. So when it's on 0, it's hidden. But the very first time that it goes up, when it first receives that signal to increment 10s, that's when it shows itself. Okay, I'm going to play test this now. But in order to play test it, I need to play for a while to get past that 10 mark. So what I'm going to do is, just to help myself out, is I'm going to set my health to something nice and high, like 30 or 25. Let's 25 should be enough. And that'll give me a lot of health so that I can storm up to the high levels and check this out. So let's start the game. Pressing OK. I won't make you watch this whole thing. I'm just going to fast forward. Okay, so I fast forwarded, and as you can see, it's working perfectly. I've gone into the 14s, 15, and so we got all the 1s and so on. I'm going to fast forward again until we get to the 2s. Okay, we're on 19 now, 20. So that seems to be working just fine. So it's important to kind of play test this quite a bit to make sure it's not going weird at any higher numbers. Okay, fast forwarded now, we're in the 30s, and everything continues to be okay. So yeah, just keep play testing, but I think we've got a good system up and running here. It'll go all the way up to 99, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for listening, and if you find this video useful, please hit like and subscribe.